help you be successful. And I want you to think about one goal that you have in your life, and I want to try to help you reach that goal, but I want you to make sure that it's realistic. And he said, before you get out of this hospital, I want to help you with that. And I remember him standing up and about to walk out the door, and me, telling him, like, hey, Dr. Guy, I know what I want. And him turning around and sitting down with me, and here I am, 29 years old, and him sitting down with me is like, how do you know what you want this quick? Like, and I'm sure he might have somebody that is thinking, I want to be able to drive again. I want to be able to throw a baseball again, or whatever it is. And he sits down with me and he says, what do you want to be able to do? And I told him, I said, I have 2 daughters, and I said, I have to be able to hold my kids. That's it. That's all I care about. And I remember him, and obviously, it was really hard. He cried, I cried, whatever. And I remember him saying, I will make sure that happens, And then the next day he comes in my room and he sits down with me and he says, hey, Jason, your kids are here to see you. Mm. And this might be 4 or 5 days after losing my arms. And him saying, I'm going to bring the kids into your room. And I said, no, you're not. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I do not want my kids to see me hooked up to all these machines, no arms, heart monitors, tubes hanging out of my arms, feeding tube. I was hooked up to all kinds of stuff. And I said, I want to go to the waiting room. And Dr. Guy saying, dude, there's no way I can get you to the waiting room unless I unhooked you from all this stuff. And me telling him, unhook me. Like, I want to go to the waiting room. I want to hold my kids out there. I want it to be as close to normal as it can be. And me talking him into that, and him unhooking feeding tubes and all that stuff, and me remembering what that feels like to unhook a feeding tube and pulling it out of your stomach. And I went to the waiting room that day, and I held my kids for the first time 5 or 6 days after losing 2 arms. And I had that peace that went through my mind, through my body, that was, everything's going to be okay. I don't know how, but it's all going to work out. And I just remember having that peace of knowing that God would provide one way or another. And not knowing how, but just trusting that he would make it work. You know what I mean? And it's hard to do.
So, Jason, I need to ask you this. I don't know if you've ever been asked this question. I've never asked it. But you mentioned a sense of peace. And I experienced that when I was going through my post-traumatic stress storm. Truly, there was a point in time, live or die, and I was really washed over with peace, and it was true faith. But can you describe a little bit more details to the people that have never felt that? But you were in a position, maybe you're questioning, whether you're going to live or die. You're focusing on your daughters. But for those that are curious, and I am too, with your feelings on this, when you say a sense of peace, can you unpack that a little bit more? Because, and anyway, just tell us in your words what that was.
Yeah, I think that piece was that I had both my parents growing up, mom and dad in the same house, married, you know what I mean? And I know how important it was to me to have a dad and a mom in my life. And I know some people don't have that, unfortunately, but I knew what that was like. And I knew that my girls deserved to have a dad. Mm-hmm. And have a dad, whatever that looked like. For me, being a dad was, walking them down an aisle one day, or playing softball with them, or even just holding their hands across the street, or whatever that was. And I knew, like, the peace that I got, I knew I could have died that day pretty easy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I didn't. So I knew that my life was spared for a reason, And even if that reason was just to be a dad and not be able to ever do anything for myself again, I knew that there was a reason, and I had that peace that went through my body and my mind that, life's not about me anymore. It's about my kids. And I don't get to talk about my son as often, and I will later. I have 3 kids now, but at the time I just had the 2. And did I know that my wife would stay with me? No, not really. I mean, I knew that when I married my wife, that she was a very big Christian, doesn't believe in divorce, doesn't believe, when she said I do, she meant that, all those words you say when you get married. But I really didn't know, Jenny was 27 when I got hurt. And literally the easiest thing for her to have done is wash her hands and say, I don't want this lifestyle, and leave. I mean, that would have been the easiest thing. And she didn't, and she still hadn't. Now it's too late. She can't now, but she, even at that moment, I didn't know what that looked like probably as much, but I knew that I had these 2 little girls that I had to raise, and I had to still be a dad. And I just think that was the piece that I felt was my life was spared. So
yeah,
what do we do now?
Okay.
What's the step?
If you like this episode, check out the full podcast right here. If you want to see more videos, you need to check out right here. Remember, the most important person you're ever going to lead is you.